Representative Madeleine Dean just asked Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick a simple question. Why did you lie to the New York Post about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Lutnik told the Post that the last time he saw Epstein was in 2005 when he took a tour of his house, which happened to be right next door to his. He said he and his wife were so grossed out by this disgusting person that they swore they would never go back. But when the Epstein files came out, that turned out to be a lie.
You claim you and your wife were so grossed out by this disgusting person you swore you would never go back. But when the Epstein files came out, it turned out that was a lie.
Lutnik was forced to admit that he had visited Epstein's private island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution and was labeled a sex offender. He brought along his wife, his kids, and his nannies. That was not even the whole truth. 5 days after visiting the island, Lutnik and Epstein signed a business deal together as co-investors in a digital advertising company called AdFin. An email showed they stayed in touch about the deal as late as 2018.
It turns out that 5 days after visiting his island, you and Epstein signed a business deal together as co-investors in a digital advertising company, AdFin. An email showed you stayed in touch with Epstein about this deal as late as 2018.
Dean asked Lutnik why he lied. He said he would answer the question, but wanted to do it behind closed doors, not under oath, without the committee's ability to question him. Dean reclaimed her time. She said the cover-up continues. She asked if the president is concerned about Lutnick's continued relationship with Epstein as recently as 2018. Lutnik refused to answer.
You know what? In your conversations with the president, is the president concerned about your continued relationship that you had with Mr. Epstein as recently as 2018?
I'm not going to discuss conversations I have with the president. That is not something I'm going to do.
Then Dean switched topics. She said Lutnick's sons are profiting from his work as Commerce Secretary. The administration imposed the highest tariffs since the Great Depression. Lutnick's sons figured out how to profit by buying up refund rights pennies on the dollar while Lutnik cheerleads the tariffs. She said taxpayers may now owe Lutnick's family tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. Lutnik said that is false. He said the reporting is not true. Dean said she hopes he recognizes how fundamentally wrong and corrupt this is. She told him to resign before he is fired. Lutnik said it is not true. The time expired. Let's watch.
Good afternoon, Secretary Lutnick. Last Tuesday, I had the chance to attend a breakfast for RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. It was their Congressional Day of Action. Survivors came to me, told me their horrific stories, and the survivors I spoke with had one message. They're seeking accountability and justice. After speaking with the survivors, I again went to the Department of Justice to review the unredacted Epstein files, to seek accountability and justice for the victims, the more than 1,000 victims and survivors. And today, Secretary Lutnick, I have some questions for you about what I saw. Let's start with your relationship with sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. In October, you told the New York Post with colorful narration that the last time you saw Jeffrey Epstein was in 2005 when you took a tour of his house, which happened to be right next door to yours. You claim you and your wife were so grossed out by this disgusting person you swore you would never go back. But when the Epstein files came out, it turned out that was a lie. You were forced to admit that you had visited Epstein's private island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein pled guilty soliciting a minor for prostitution and was labeled a sex offender. You brought along your wife, your kids, your nannies to the predator's island. Incredibly poor judgment. But that even wasn't the whole truth. It turns out that 5 days after visiting his island, you and Epstein signed a business deal together as co-investors in a digital advertising company, AdFin. An email showed you stayed in touch with Epstein about this deal as late as 2018. Secretary Lutnick, why did you lie to the New York Post about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, I did hear that. Please don't repeat your gracious offer to speak behind closed doors, not under oath, without the ability of this committee to question you. The American people wants to know, why did you lie about your relationship with Epstein?
The House Oversight Committee and I have agreed
We
that
are
we will
the
spend
appropriate
the time
reclaiming my
together.
time. I do not accept that answer. We've heard that one. We are our own committee. We have our own reason to test your credibility and veracity. Please answer the question. Why did you lie to the Post?
I have voluntarily agreed to spend the time and talk about it.
I reclaim the time. Let the record reflect you're dodging the question. The cover-up continues. You know what? In your conversations with the president, is the president concerned about your continued relationship that you had with Mr. Epstein as recently as 2018?
I am not going to discuss conversations I have with the president. That is not something I'm going to do.
If you remember in that interview, you said you would never be in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. President Trump has just fired 3 cabinet secretaries, 3 women, Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, Lori Chavez-DeRemer. If President Trump has even a shred of concern about accountability for Jeffrey Epstein's enablers, he would fire you too. Beyond AdFin, what other financial ties do you have to Jeffrey Epstein?
As I said, I'm going to answer all these
Beyond AdFin, what other financial ties? You're the Commerce Secretary. We have a right to ask this question and get it answered.
Again, I'm not going to spend the budget day discussing something I've set aside time to spend on this topic
I'm going to
with your
switch
House
topics.
colleagues.
Let me switch topics. A different and equally disturbing issue, how your family is profiting from your work as Commerce Secretary. Let's start with tariffs. You and the president illegally imposed the highest tariffs on the American people since the Great Depression. And your sons figured out how to profit from the high tariffs by buying up refund rights, pennies on the dollar, just as you were out there cheerleading the tariffs. As a result, federal taxpayers like my constituents may now owe your family tens of or hundreds of millions of dollars. I wonder if President Trump is concerned about you and your family profiteering off the illegal tariffs.
You know that that is false. Here's reporting. I'd like to put it in the record. Howard Lutnick's old firm did not, in fact, profit from Supreme Court tariff ruling. It is just
It's your
not
sons.
true.
It's your sons. The
No,
reporting
his
isn't
old
your-
firm and my sons. It is
Mr.
not
Mr. Chairman,
true.
reclaiming
and you
my
know
time.
it's not true.
I have
it's
asked
not true.
Mr. Chairman, reclaiming about 20 seconds. I hope you recognize how fundamentally wrong and corrupt this is. I hope you take accountability and have the decency to resign before you are fired.
It's not true.
I yield.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
This hearing is a masterclass in how to use a witness's own words and documented evidence to expose a pattern of deception. Representative Madeleine Dean came prepared with specific dates, specific documents, specific business deals, and a specific question that Lutnik could not answer. Why did you lie? The core allegation is simple. Lutnik told the New York Post that he last saw Epstein in 2005. He said he and his wife were so disgusted that they swore never to return. That was a lie. The Epstein files show that Lutnik visited Epstein's private island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor, 4 years after he was labeled a sex offender. Lutnik brought his wife, his kids, and his nannies. That is not a casual encounter. That is a family vacation to a predator's island. But that was not even the whole truth. 5 days after visiting the island, Lutnik and Epstein signed a business deal together. They were co-investors in a digital advertising company called AdFin. An email showed they stayed in touch about the deal as late as 2018. That is not a one-time encounter. That is a continuing relationship. That is a business relationship. That is a financial relationship. And Lutnik lied about it. Dean asked Lutnik why he lied. He did not answer. He said he would answer behind closed doors, not under oath, without the committee's ability to question him. Dean rejected that. She said the cover-up continues. She asked if the president is concerned about Lutnik's relationship with Epstein. Lutnik refused to answer. Then Dean switched topics. The administration imposed the highest tariffs since the Great Depression. Lutnik's sons figured out how to profit by buying up refund rights pennies on the dollar, while Lutnik cheerleads the tariffs. Federal taxpayers may now owe Lutnik's family tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. Lutnik said that is false. He said the reporting is not true. He did not explain why. He did not provide evidence. He just said it was not true. Dean's closing statement was the most important part of the exchange. She said she hopes Lutnik recognizes how fundamentally wrong and corrupt this is. She told him to resign before he is fired. That is not a question. That is a verdict. She is not asking for an explanation. She is telling him that he is guilty. Lutnik's defense was not a defense. He said he would answer the questions behind closed doors. He said the tariff allegations are not true. He did not explain why he lied about Epstein. He did not explain why he visited the island. He did not explain why he signed a business deal with a convicted sex offender. He did not explain why he stayed in touch until 2018. He just denied. He said it is not true. He said it is not true. He said it is not true. That is not an answer. That is an evasion. The underlying issue here is not about Lutnik's relationship with Epstein. It is about accountability. The American people deserve to know why a cabinet secretary lied about his relationship with a convicted sex trafficker. They deserve to know why he visited a predator's island with his family. They deserve to know why he did business with him. They deserve to know why his family is profiting from tariffs. They deserve to know why the administration is covering for him. Dean asked those questions. Lutnik did not answer them. He said he would answer them behind closed doors. That is not transparency. That is a cover-up. Dean did not get Lutnik to admit wrongdoing. She did not get him to resign. She did not get an apology for the survivors. But she did something important. She put the questions on the record. She showed that Lutnik lied about his relationship with Epstein. She showed that he visited the island with his family. She showed that he did business with him. She showed that his family is profiting from tariffs. She showed that he will not answer basic questions. That is not nothing. That is the beginning of accountability. The survivors are watching.